Okay, and the final PowerPoint lecture for this week on social identity takes a little bit of psychology of organization structure, and so we're going to look at how things change once we start adding in communities. And again, for each of these, I'm just kind of adding some layers to things. Once you're done with this, you still have the Blackboard discussion board. Make sure that you're still talking about the episodes. And then next week, when we finish up with community, within the lecture, I will have kind of a capstone project I'm going to ask you to do, which, again, is just a paragraph or two that you're going to be putting into Blackboard, but I'll talk about that next week. Right now, I just want you to start thinking about this idea of community. How does it apply within Doctor Who? When you're watching the next episodes, I can tell you the next quiz next Tuesday is going to have questions about community, and it's going to have who's part of whose community, why, etc. So you do need to think each time that you're coming across new characters, new episodes now, what archetype is this person fitting into? Is it the hero, the anti-hero, the tragic hero, the villain, the maiden, the sage, damsel in distress? You need to think about those aspects. But now you also need to start thinking about and looking at the communities they make for themselves, because that's going to be coming up in the quizzes that you have. In the social identity approach, these are some ideas that came out, again, out of psychology of organizations. And so I'm going to put these into kind of psychology terms. We've already looked at the second bullet point, that the self is context dependent. So we talked about last week that we're not really one personal identity that stays the same throughout our life, that we change. It's fluid, it's dynamic, and who we are changes within our personal, social, organizational, national, and human settings. Who I am at home with my family is different than who I am with my coworkers, who I am in my classroom, who I am when I am at church, who I am, when I am overseas, somewhat of a representative of the United States. So my identity changes from place to place, from structure to structure. And also based on our motivation, interactions, it will change as well. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of charts is kind of show you how these can be manipulated and change. So imagine that if you are looking just at yourself, and this is the picture on the left, you're only taking yourself into consideration, then what you're going to do is for the best of you only, and it doesn't matter if it has a positive or negative impact on those around you. So you're only thinking of me. But if you consider yourself as a social group, often your decisions no longer lie just in what's best for me, but what's best for the whole group. So community identity makes us change our motivation. We now have a group mentality of we, what is best for us. And so on one hand, personal identity is guided by your personal values and standards, sometimes personal gain. Social identity is guided by our shared values and standards. So if we were to look at different organizational identity, the orange is whatever organizational structure we have. So let's take the example of individual students, let's say at a high school. And we have, let's say, so this is orange is the high school. Green circle are all the males, and then each individual blue would be an individual male student. The purple circle would be the female student, so we've just divided you among males and females. Then if everyone's going to work at the personal level, in other words, we each want to get to valedictorian, we're going to do whatever it takes to get valedictorian, then we're going to see that one person is going to get that. One person is going to stay within the circle. Everyone else falls out of it. So that means that there's going to be competition. Everyone's going to be fighting each other in order to get that one spot, whatever that may be, whether it's valedictorian or some other kind of idea. But if we put value on the one person succeeding, then motive to cooperate is low. The self-esteem is derived from personal achievements. You know you're a good person. You know you have value because of what you've achieved. But the motivation to cooperate and to help other people is very low because you want to be the one person who gets to the top. If we take a different example where we say that we have, let's say I divide a class of 30 students into two halves, and I say, so the orange now represents my classroom, the green represents half of my class that I've randomly chosen, and the blue is each individual person. The purple represents the other half of the class. So imagine a class of 30 chairs. I just divide the class literally in two. Then if I say whichever group wins this trivia game on Doctor Who that we're just about to play, every person within that group automatically gets an A in this class. The losing group, you get whatever grade you have earned. So what does that end up doing? As we're now in subgroup identity, because you're no longer seeing yourself as just a member of an individual identity. You're no longer seeing yourself as you against the world. You're seeing is that I've got to cooperate with everyone in my group to make sure we get the winning outcome. And so what that does is put competition between the two, but it also puts motivation. So within a group, everyone's going to cooperate with each other. So the community has a lot of cooperation, even though motivation to cooperate with other groups is very low. If we want to win to get the A automatically, we've got to make sure they don't. So that's another way that us putting in communities, we start to pit one community against another. Then a final approach is if we look at it at the organizational level. If we say, for example, that everyone in this class, we work at Barnes & Nobles. Ours is a Barnes & Noble store, and every single one of you is a different employee within the my Barnes & Noble store. Some of you are managers, some of you are assistant managers, some of you work in the cafe, some of you stack books, some of you are cashiers. It doesn't matter. We all work at Barnes & Noble Store 101. And that's what this is Store 101. And this could be the cashiers, this could be the managers, it doesn't matter. If we find out that Barnes & Noble has announced that the store, throughout all of their stores in the United States, the one store that has zero absenteeism in a year or something, every single person working in that store gets a $100,000 bonus. Then, at that organizational level, all of the different subgroups within us disappear. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, or gay or straight, or religious or atheist, or American or from another country, or bilingual or monolingual, or a cashier or a manager. Since every single person is going to receive the same reward, then we are all going to work together to make sure our same goal happens. And so at the organizational identity, we see that we all become one. We get rid of all those distinctions between us. And that's the important aspect of the different levels of how we consider our communities. If our community is at the smallest level, just ourselves, we act in a more selfish, me-only fashion. As we put ourselves into a community, we start thinking of we, but that community still may be in competition with another community, so there's not a lot of cooperation. But then if we look at ourselves as a global community, then we're going to see a lot more cooperation because we're all working together. And so this is going to become important in Doctor Who because we do now become global citizens with sometimes the Earth versus other people, versus other aliens. So we do have to work as independent identities within the whole global structure, and we have to have high levels of cooperation. And so we will be delving into that again a little bit more deeply as we look at some of the different episodes and some of the adversaries that we come up against.